So, welcome back to this episode of Love Squared. And as usually, we're talking about relationships. Hopefully, it helps you. Actually, I know it helps you if you're watching this show. Susan and Glenn, thank you for contributing once again. How you guys doing today?
Doing great. We're about to talk about one of my favorite subjects is quote unquote action.
Uh-oh. Get ready, everybody. And she's talking about action, not lights, camera action, but lights off, no cameras, and let's have some action.
Hey, some people like the cameras.
Oh yeah, no. I actually was going to say it is for with only OnlyFans and Pornhubs and all that stuff. Some people found to make money on the action in the bedroom. I don't know why I'm going that way, but I would say I don't actually. Let me ask you this question: is that in any way healthy? Like with those porn habits in the relationship in general? Like some people introduce pornography to the sex life right off the bat.
Well, to each their own, I guess, but not me. You know what? I don't like depravity. For me, depravity, and no, I don't like that at all. But hey, I know people that love it. It gets them going, and hey, to each their own. But no.
Glenn, I think I know what you're going to say about it. Tell me.
No, today a lot of people use sex as a compulsive disorder. They have an addiction to it, because it's a dopamine release. I mean, what is that level? People they're satiating their sexual needs. When you have to do that, then you have another compulsive disorder. So you maybe have addictive personality disorder.
So sex used as a coping mechanism for I don't know, for a lot of people, but for some people for sure, sex used as a coping mechanism. But what we're here to talk about specifically, I guess, and you said it at the gym today, champ. Action oftentimes brings that's the thing that brings people together, the sexual tension, right? And a lot of relationships starts with one night stand, and then it, as you said, it keeps on standing, right? And then it develops into something else. So it's not built on the values that we talk about. It built on some kind of physical attraction. It's pretty shallow, and it doesn't go anywhere. So oftentimes that's usually a problem to begin with if the relationship starts with this sort of connection where it's pure physical, right?
You know what? I don't have a problem with one night stands. That's the whole thing about me. I don't. To me, if it's done as adults and it's not done through controlling one another, if it's consent on both sides, then hey, what's nothing wrong with a one night stand if you know who you're dealing with. You're not going to the street corner finding somebody because that makes you a hooker. But anyway, if you're not getting paid, it's even worse. But no, but I mean, one night stands is not an issue. Um, because I think everybody wants that intimacy, even if it's short term. But hey, that's what I believe. And I don't even have a problem with somebody sleeping with somebody on their first date because I married mine. So it doesn't matter. You know what? I think that when it's your individual choice, it's how confident and how well you feel in that position, right? If you feel dirty doing it, then don't do it. If you are strong and you're confident and you know what you're doing, then do it. But I don't really let judgment define what I do. If I want to have sex on the first night, I will. But hey, I've been married for too long now, so I don't even think about that.
That's a strange.
Oh, Glenn, okay, but that's
You
perfect.
sound like a modern woman. You see, that's the mindset of the modern woman. It's no, I use the guys too. I feel uninhibited, so I'm just going to use the guy. And the average 23-year-old has had more sex partners than the average 53-year-old. So,
Who
like,
says that the woman's using the guy though? How about if they're
That's-
both consenting to enjoy something, right? One night stands when a woman's consenting to it doesn't mean she's using the guy. Both the guy is enjoying it just as much as the woman.
yeah, so then that creates just using other people for personal satisfaction. And when you have two people doing it with that mindset, maybe that creates that bad behavior that we say that we see today. That's very, very pervasive in society, and it leads to a lot of people not really trusting each other, and it's just about me, and it creates that narcissistic mindset a little bit. It gears towards that. Let's face it, we've said it many times on the channel. Women are the gatekeepers to sex because they have the organ on the inside. So they decide, what goes in there, who goes in there, and who doesn't. And with that also comes a lot of responsibility. And that's a lot of power that a woman has, and power over a man. Let's face it, the men are just the hunters, right? They're looking for a girl who's very attractive, stands out, carries herself very well. But I'd like to say, there's a difference between attraction and beauty. From a man's point of view, there are a lot of beautiful looking women out there, but they're not attractive. You see, the way, some of the things that they talk about, or they create that atmosphere of conflict all the time. A traditional man doesn't want that. Maybe a modern man wants that, but a modern man is usually a sissy. He's a pussy, he's a wimp, and they call it a simp, a simpleton. He'll just do anything and say anything just to be, because he feels lucky with this girl.
Happy wife, happy life type of thing.
Happy wife, happy life, which there's no such thing, by the way. Okay? Your happy life starts with you. You make yourself, you work on yourself from the inside out. Whether somebody's with you or not with you, you're still going to be happy. So you learn to love yourself on a positive and a good way. Now you want to share this love. You want to give love to somebody else. But unfortunately today, most people, they look to meet other people to give them love because they want to be loved. They don't love themselves, and they want somebody else to fill the void by having somebody else love them. And then again, we get back onto that just using somebody else for your own personal benefit.
Well, I'm glad you guys have two different opinions, so we'll have a pretty interesting show based on this. So
Yeah.
stay tuned for some controversy. But it's not really controversial. I think that's a perfect example of, let's say you guys are a couple and you meet together at the table on a date. You clearly have two different stands. Let's say you're attracted to each other physically, but based on what just happened, what you just said, would you still pursue Susan as your interest, Glenn? Let's say that was the date, and you're sitting at the table right now at the coffee shop, and you just discovered that about her.
Obviously, Champ, G-Man has had many one-night stands.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous now.
Exactly.
You're into triple digits easily, but
I'll pray for you.
A lot of them, it wasn't disrespectful. That was at a time in my life. I was a lot younger back then, obviously. And but now, as I've grown a little bit more mature, a little bit wiser, and then I put myself in a position. I remember what my father said: "You have to remember, son, that's another man's daughter." That's what affected me. And like if I was married and I had my own children, my daughters would be at a certain age right now, where I'd be looking at the men and I say, "Hey, Big Daddy G-Man knows what you're thinking." Mm-hmm. I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And you act with class with my daughter, okay?
But now we're talking about not even the younger generation. We're talking about our generation, because in the age group over 40,
yep,
I deal with a lot of women that who don't really know how to operate when they're out there looking for love or dating or anything like that. And also, one of the things I notice, I deal with a lot of clients that are sexually frustrated. So the first thing I do is, can you please go have some sex, please, so we could get the job done? Like there is that frustration that as a human being you need to release. Yes, they can work on themselves, but there's also a sexuality that we all have as a human being. We're not robots. So it's finding that balance of, do you want it or do you not want it? Or even the women that say, well, they say they don't want it or they don't want it in a certain way. It's only because they've been guilted by society and the judgment of what it should be. So, but let's go into the marriages. When we're single, that's a whole different, we can create a whole show on just single and sex and single and quote unquote action.
And I'm glad you brought it up, because if we just talk about action and sex and making love and all that stuff, if we work from all different perspectives, like you said, there's many different discussions. But the importance of this show, it's a relationship show. Why is sex, love making, or action, why is that so important in a relationship? What value does it have? What value does it bring to the relationship? How does it strengthen it? How often should you have it? And what happens when you don't have it anymore? How does it impact the relationship? I mean, I'll take a strong position here because I mean, of my own personal values, I understand the value of the family and the importance of the love making between men and a woman. To me, it's very clear, and I would tell you, like, I take a position where, trying to reserve that as something sacred, something special. So I think if you go out there and do multiple nightstands, in your lifetime, maybe you'll take away value from the action itself. So when
Hmm.
you do have that action in your marriage, and maybe it would lose its value in relation to the relationship. That's how I perceive it. But it does happen. It does happen, brothers and sisters, where happy marriage and honeymoon's over. And by honeymoon, I don't mean the actual a weekend at Hawaii or whatever you choose to go for honeymoon, but honeymoon period of where you kind of settled and maybe you burdened with everyday things, or maybe it's a birth of a child. Often it does happen when the child is born in any kind of relationship, the sexual relationship between man and wife is over. Susan, why is that usually?
Well, don't forget, the honeymoon period is called the honeymoon period because human nature is we always want what we don't have, right? So there's this chase within the human nature that during the beginning, you don't really have that person full on yet. So therefore, there's this passion of the desire of wanting that person gets your juices going. So that's why during the honeymoon period, that relationship, that sexual relationship is usually stronger, right? But then once you have somebody, you know how that saying goes, once you have me, then it's almost like you take each other for granted. So over time that happens. But this is why when you're in a relationship and you get married, part of the vows, and believe me, I've had these conversations multiple dozens of times with my husband over the years, right? And it's work to keep that passion going because you make a vow that you are not to cheat or be unfaithful or anything like that. But if one person doesn't give in to that intimacy, then I'm sorry, but then you're stuck with no action whatsoever. So there's an obligation there towards each other to stay faithful, but also communicate what's going on because you can't just go mute and deprive the other person of physical intimacy.
So it is true. I know, Glenn, you got to say something, but I'm just going to interject.
What made you know I was going to say
I
something?
just know. So
Because you talk out loud, in your mind.
So it is fair to say that each relationship is work in progress, and I don't want to consider relationship as work, but there's certain things that we need to do, like have a financial discussion once a week, go on the dates maybe twice a week, whatever that date is, movies, dinner, walk in the park, whatever that is, right? And also like a action obligation, maybe a daily activity, or I don't know, whatever the schedule you can fall into. Is we're not here to discuss this, but it is part of it. Like at what point do you discuss it? Do you discuss it? Like you obviously don't, but if you discuss it when it's already in the shambles, then it's too late, right? This conversation to be had even way before marriage in terms of, and I guess goes back to your original premise. Every relationship starts with value discovery. Are you sharing the same values? Are you on the same page regarding your life, specifically love life and relationships?
Yeah, you have to have those core values. I mean, my core value is open communication. No matter how brutal the conversation is, no matter how contentious it is, we lay it all out and it's out of our system. There's no resentment. So that's my core value. And that's what I share with Kevin. But not everybody's core value is open communication. Some people just would rather not talk about anything and pretend it doesn't exist. If that's somebody's core value, then it's not matched with mine because I can't live with somebody that doesn't want to discuss the fact that they don't want to do anything in bed and then there's no talk about it and one person is struggling and there's just no conversation. So that's why it's really important that as two people live together over time, things are going to change. And stresses are going to happen, problems are going to come up in life, and how we deal with it requires communication, or if we don't, then it's going to affect our physical well-being in terms of being able to be intimate. Being intimate with each other requires a lot of giving. It's giving to each other. So if especially this is the one thing I see with women, and I don't know, maybe you guys are seeing it differently, but with women, we tend to overgive out there. We're giving to everybody. We're giving ourselves to our friends. We're giving to everybody else, and then we get home. Our husbands want us. Are you kidding me? I have nothing to give you. Or especially if they have kids. So if you have kids, it's a whole different ballgame. The poor husband is left aside. So there has to be some communication there. There has to be some give and take. And if the man wants to be a part of that giving, they need to do some work too, right? Because as women, we just seem to take on the world, even though nobody asked us to.
Well, this one we agree on because when it comes to sex, the G-man loves giving it. Okay,
Oh, a lot of women would love that statement.
but it's true. I mean, that's your job as a man. Okay, you're supposed to know what you're doing and keep the woman engaged. Obviously,
Can we have another show where he's teaching other men on how to give it? Because that was a question from one of my clients. Can you just ask these guys to teach other guys on how to give it?
you know, in the beginning, it's new. You were talking about juices, gets the juices going. You know, but after time goes on, you get used to each other. Maybe you know, time goes by, so you don't look the same. Maybe one partner has given up and gained like 70 pounds. I dislike a man who puts on all kinds of weight, you know, after he's got his lady. You know, I mean, in that hindsight, you would think, well, the juice is not worth the squeeze anymore when you see a guy way overweight. But in the beginning, it's lovemaking, okay? And then to keep that going is a fine line between lovemaking and lust making. Okay, so now are you making love, or are you just working towards your next dopamine release again? In other words, you're getting that addictive behavior. There's always a fine line between the good and the evil.
But actually, how do you know the difference? If it's like you personally, let's say, because a lot of us operate on the subconscious level, right? Especially if we come into trauma bonding and we use sex as a coping mechanism. Thus, you know, like this uncontrolled fornication by men or women, doesn't matter. How do you know? What do you think? Like for you personally, what's advice we can give to listeners? How do you know if you're using sex as a coping mechanism, even in your relationship, versus it's lovemaking?
Probably when that's like the most important thing is the actual physical intimacy. You value that more than the person in the relationship.
Or
And if that person was incapacitated or something happened and not there for a little while, the guy would go and look for it somewhere else. As long as that physical need is being met, he thinks he's okay. Now he's on that slippery slope. You see, a man has to use his instinct more, and a woman has to use her intuition a little bit more to realize where that fine line is, and to try not to go over it or over it too many times and come back to the good ASAP.
Or how does it make you feel when the action is over? When, you know, when the lovemaking process or fornication is over, what feelings, what are you experiencing at that moment? Do you feel satisfied, or do you feel like you need to move on to a different thing? Like, okay, I got to go to work. I got to go play my video game. I got to go do something. I got to go, you know, whatever it is. Or you still want to stay and cuddle and enjoy your partner. I don't know. Is there indication in there, Susan? I guess that's a question to you. Like affection after the lovemaking when it's over. Is that a telltale for people, like saying, like, if your partner wants to, you know, because it's different for men and women, right, Glenn?
And it's also different what time of the day. The nighttime will be
cuddle.
that cuddling after. The morning quickie.
I got to go to work.
I got to go. Oh, that was great, money. Gone.
But I can't, because, you know, like, she's like, oh, you always do this, you know, like, this never happened to me before, but people just want to run away and do this, you know. How do you, so there's some, is it a,
Never heard that.
Is it a significant, is it
I never heard it. I don't know. I swear.
Well, I don't know who wants to run away, but it's true. No, it depends on which part of the day, of course, but I think that's a very personal thing, right? Because some people are cuddlers. If I know nighttime, usually the men fall right asleep. So, I mean, that's a typical thing. That's pretty much across the board. A man will fall asleep. So the woman should definitely just go to sleep, for God's sakes. What do you want more of? Like, seriously, go to sleep, right? But anyway, but it's a personal thing. The only thing that you'll see change in a relationship is who says no more often, because the no's are the ones that is the problem. When you start hearing the no, not now, or no, not tonight, or or just complete rejection. Right, because in the beginning it's not rejection. You'll do it on the street, you'll do it in the laneway, you'll do it everywhere, right, in the kitchen and living room, and then as the years go on, and then it's like, no, not right now,
On a
no,
boat, on a sea-doo.
yeah, whatever,
You know.
in the public toilet, I don't know, but just anywhere. But then all of a sudden, as the years go on, or as the
Welcome to Glenn's and Susan memoirs.
but but no, it's how many times you get rejected, right? And then how are those rejections handled? So
But also, could a rejection be like, especially if it's a continuous one, it could also be a red flag that maybe something's off. Maybe the other partner is getting it somewhere else.
well, put it this way.
That would
It-
be later on.
it-
Like if he's willing to stray at the beginning when there's something wrong,
Well, there are
there
women.
was always something wrong.
No, it couldn't. What happens is it changes. So that person, there's never anything wrong in the beginning when everything's exciting and everything's a chase. But what happens with what's wrong after is how, I mean, from the woman's perspective, I know that when women get too much in their head, there is nothing going on down there in juices. Okay. A woman should not be in her head. So nowadays, with women too much in their head, which is competition, control, they've become the man. So how can they possibly feel sexy? How can they possibly feel sexy being a man? So the only way for us women to make sure we go into our feminine role is to get the heck out of our head. Because I'm telling you now, I work with a lot of women. They cannot get the big O when they are in their head.
Yeah, stop thinking, right?
Yeah, like, what are you doing in your head?
Be in the moment, right?
Yeah.
So
Just let go of all those thoughts. Just be vulnerable and let the man do their thing, right? So that's why I have a client that really, she couldn't find any man to do the right thing down there or anywhere, and I'm like, well, just get out of your head, like, literally. So she started getting out of her, but that was a challenge and a half, because she's just overthinking it or analyzing, and man, you just killed the whole act. So in a relationship, the activity tended to go downhill very quickly in her relationships over time, right?
So you don't think maybe she has a problem, or she's not bringing out the best in the men that she's meeting? I don't know. To me, this concept is foreign, because G-Man runs the show, and I'm into it. And you're going. I made this joke once, but it was true. I told a girl, I said, we're going to go out. We're going to have a few drinks in a nice, beautiful place. I'm going to make you feel so good. Then I'm going to take you home, and I'm going to pleasure you. I'm going to bring you to heights that you've never been before.
What a promise
You're
that is.
going to, you'll remember that for the rest of your life. And then in the morning, when we wake up, you'll be my slave. Forever.
addicted, right, to your Glenn charm.
We're going to
Well-
prostitute him after this show. I'm going to make some
A
money.
man should be proud at what he's doing, to be able to satisfy a woman where a woman craves this guy. If you do that, just that alone, the chances of being told no goes away exponentially, obviously. So there must be something going wrong in the relationship for people not to want to engage in something with each other that they used to have such a great
Yep.
time doing before.
Yep.
So from a man's point of view, I look at some of my brothers and I say, brother, you've been married to this girl for 10 years, but in those 10 years, you went from a man, now you look like a walrus. You've gained 100 pounds. I mean, she's underneath of you. She's like, just get off, get it over with. How is she going to enjoy herself? That's not, put it this way. If the guy was 100 pounds overweight way in the beginning, would she have met him and went out with him? So you're doing a disservice to your partner first, but first and foremost, obviously, to yourself. There's something wrong when you let yourself go like that.
But it's not always just physical, right? Sometimes people or maybe they don't let themselves go, but they drop the guards down, the ones they kept during the honeymoon phase. Was more physical. And when it goes to the mundane, everyday thing, you start to see other sides of the person. And maybe it's the mental things.
It's the mental and
The
emotional
focus.
changes.
In the
Right.
beginning, you're focusing on everything you like about this person. Then you get used to it. Now you start seeing a few things that you don't like, they were always there, but you just didn't see them. You didn't see the flags. Now you're focusing on all the things that you don't like about this person. Well, it's just when you're not aware of that, then you can just about be 100% sure that that's not going to last. That's not going to stay in the game.
So fundamentally, the man is the foundation, is the center, is the of the relation of the family. Let's say we'll focus on the family, right? So he is the breadwinner, and he's the, like you said, he sort of controls different aspects of the household. in a sense.
Exactly. Champ, I asked my father, father to son talk. I said, Dad, it must be a little difficult for a man to be married to the same woman for 40 years. And you know what his exact words were? He says, son, it takes a special type of woman to keep a man happy for 40 years. So in other words, he was giving a kudos to my mother. Like, that's a special woman, you see?
But isn't it like, okay, so let's take a step back, because I think the lovemaking and sex to a lot of people, especially this honeymoon that we describe, the honeymoon phase that we describe, is the foundation of the relationship in the beginning, right? Because like you're so attracted to each other physically and even emotionally in that sense, right? But when everyday thing starts and your relationship is challenged on every level, including financial,
Yep.
that's not the priority anymore. And if your relationship was built on sex, so to speak, then a relationship becomes empty because that thing that was holding the relationship together is gone.
Well, that's why when you're in a relationship and as the days go on, the months go on, the years go on, how we deal with stresses in life dictate how we feel about ourselves and about each other, right? So it comes to the point where it takes a lot of communication and a lot of vulnerability too to show where our weaknesses are at any given time. So when you have one person not being present for another, or you emotionally check out, well, you're breaking. And this is the thing with women across the board. I don't care who it is. When trust is broken, the woman no longer feels safe. Therefore, they go into their head. So one of the things that men have to learn, especially today, is just being able to emotionally be able to support the woman, to bring her out of her head, take her out of our head and put her back into her heart. Because women, when they're not feeling safe, they will leave their heart right into their head because that's survival, right? So men, there's a different skill nowadays,
Describe
right?
not living safe, not feeling safe.
Maybe financially, maybe physically, like she doesn't feel safe with the guy because maybe their environment is a little bit more aggressive. Let's face it, champ. The world is getting more aggressive. So a woman is going to be want to be with a man who she feels more comfortable with. Like if there's trouble, well, he can handle it. I'm safer with him.
What about safe space is if the woman in her head thinking that her partner is cheating on her, maybe not even based on his action, but
Yeah.
based on her previous experience,
Of
previous
course.
relationship.
Because trust is everything in any relationship. So as the years go on, and this is the thing I have worked through myself, and I was like, oh my gosh, hold on, I have to keep it up in terms of what it was. So you're constantly in your own race to make sure that you keep up whatever you were, or because I have integrity, so I want to make sure that but it's become so stressful.
Because you have integrity.
Yeah. So
Very good, sweetheart.
yeah,
Very
well,
good.
we have to, right, in a relationship. So if I made a vow to be present in that marriage for each other, then I have to make sure that if he has certain needs, I have to put myself second in whatever I'm going through. But then that becomes a lot of pressure as well. So we need to communicate that, because as life goes on, there are stresses that we have to undergo. And especially when we're parents, oh my gosh, that's a whole different ball game, right? Being parents to a child or to children, especially when two people don't have the same styles in parenting. So there's so many levels of trust that can easily be broken over time. So when a woman cannot trust that man that they're with is able to emotionally guard her, or emotionally protect her, or make sure she's always feeling safe to be emotional, then that's the best way to nurture that physical relationship. But I've seen a lot of, I mean, women just shut down, or the man is just judging the woman. You know, when a woman goes too emotional, the man just tunes out and they're sort of somewhere else. You can sense when somebody is not there, or when the man's trying to change her or change her way of thinking without listening. And that's the key, right? One of the points that we have to learn is how to listen to one another. Even the man, for the man to feel safe enough to express is like, you know what, I'm getting really stressed right now. Let's deal with this. It's not only about the woman. The man has needs too nowadays. And the stresses are becoming more and more. We have to allow the space for a man to communicate. And so if a man's not able to communicate, then
Say it. I know you want to say it. Say it.
A man has to be more stoic. Yes, just like you're in a crowded room, you have to get from this side to the other side, and you might step on somebody's toes, but that's so be it. That's what the man's job is. And yeah, it is going to be stressful, but that's what a man, he's supposed to handle his stress. Be stoic, not come home and whine to his wife about the stressful day that he had. No. He's supposed to take care of things and then come home to a loving wife, and then they take care of each other. The man takes care of things outside the home. The better he is at doing that, the better the things inside the home will be taken care of. Now, you were talking about people's feelings before, and we've said this on the show also. Be grateful for your feelings. Always listen to them, because they're always telling you the truth. They're always telling you what you're thinking. So if you're not feeling good, it's because you're not thinking good. So you're going to have to address those things. So if you want to feel better, start having better thoughts, and then that'll manifest. And it's the same thing in your relationship. Sometimes you have to sit down, together and hammer out a few little things, but don't wait until things have gotten out of line. You're supposed to have that connection. It's not just a physical connection. It's an emotional connection. It's a logical connection to a bit for the woman. It's emotional connection, a bit to a man. You're supposed to give and take for the betterment of the whole thing, for the whole relationship. And so you have to navigate, because there's always going to be stresses in life. Let's say you have 6 children, never mind 1 or 2. So you got to work around these things. They're not obstacles. I label them as challenges. If it worked once, it can work again. It's depending on what you're focusing on.
Well, you're bringing up a good point. So if you do have children in the house, right, and oftentimes, okay, I'll talk from position of psychiatrist, psychologist. Postpartum depression is a real thing. Dr. Cameron actually used it to his advantage to do MK Ultra testing here in McGill, Al-Anon institution, and been sued by, you should watch one of the interviews we did on that, but it's a real thing. Susan, what do you advise to people that have children? And it often happens, for different reasons, maybe for management, even like in the beginning, you would bring a crib into the bedroom because it's just easier to manage. The woman gets up and takes the child for breastfeeding, for comfort, etc. Or the man, takes his turn to do that. And that somehow becomes a routine. And it is the child getting older, it's definitely going to affect the sex life.
A perfect segue for the G-Man, then Susan's going to run with this. I know, let's just say a neighbor, okay, not far from here, 44 years old, been with the same girl for 20 years. They had a daughter, about 3.5 years old. He has had no intimate with his wife in 3.5 years since then. Susan, your turn.
Yeah, that's really common.
Really?
It's very
common?
It's very common, unfortunately. Yeah, it's really common, because what happens is, as women, once we give birth or we have a child, they somehow have replaced all things in life, including the man. So it takes a lot of effort to keep your marriage and your relationship very separate from your relationship with your children. I don't condone this mixing up too much of everything, because that relationship between man and wife is really important to nurture, because that can easily just go away and the man is swiped to the side. I've not only heard that, I've seen it happen. And so it's really important. Number one, you can bring the crib into the room when they're babies because you have to hear them and it's easier. But as soon as they are able to be independent, keep them out of the room. The bedroom, your bedroom is your sacred space between a man and a wife, husband and wife.
You sound like a Christian.
To bring that, no, but you can't do that, because then, so what's and first of all, I'm not a proponent of sleeping with our children. Even when my stepson had problems sleeping for 2 years when he was young, and usually they get to that phase around 7 or 8, they need to come and sleep. Like, they get scared because it's just one of the progression in evolving as they grow up and getting their confidence and independence. So he would come up to the room like all night, like, every hour practically. And I would have to wake up. I won't let him sleep in the bed, even though it's so much easier. I would go down to his room, lie down with him, wait till he falls asleep, and then come back up, and then he'll come back up a few hours later. I'm like, I will not, because our bed is our bed. You do not, that's just wrong, right? Because then you're now interfering with a relationship that is very separate. That you need to nurture your marriage with one another to be able to refuel so that you could be better parents to the child. But when we bring children into our bed, we're basically giving them the power now. And that's not a good dynamic. But hey, I think there are different camps of belief here, but I've seen way more than I want to see with marriages, and the intimacy between marriages break down because the child has now been given too much power.
So no children in the bedroom, obviously, what you're saying. And no Alexa in the bedroom either. Okay, Alexa.
I don't even like Alexa.
Good night, Alexa. And Alexa turns off the lights. You look over to your Molly there, and you say, "Hey, honey, what do you think? Alexa wasn't listening to us for the last hour?"
Well, I tell you what, and if you have your smart television with the camera, or your computer with the camera, or even your cell phone, it does the same thing. It watches you. It does. As a matter of fact, side note, the modern Wi-Fi units, they can actually scan the room pretty accurately for the objects, including people in it. It's pretty crazy. But beside the point, I think what you brought up is a matter of belief, like what you believe. But statistically, we know if those are the patterns that you fall into, it's going to affect the relationship to the negative. We know what needs to be done right. And I'm going to take a strong position here again. Let's say a Christian family and people commit to each other in a much deeper sense, in the spiritual sense, but they share those values. So they already start with some foundation together. And one of the Christian values is to stay celibate till marriage. And then once marriage happens, actually the sacred relationship, the intimate relationship between man and wife is encouraged on daily basis to maintain this intimacy between men and the woman. But before that is a no-no, right? So that goes back to the original conversation when you said you're okay with the premarital sex and all that stuff and promiscuity on both parts of both partners. But I go back to original my question: if you engage into this kind of promiscuity before you enter into a serious relationship, would that definitely take away the sacred value of the lovemaking in the family because you don't value it as much because you had it so many times with so many people, etc.?
No, I think it's everybody's different. I'm not one of these people, and nor a lot of people I know, women particularly. I cannot just go and be married to somebody for the next, I don't know how many decades. And how about if they're really bad? Like, no, no. But like my father always said, when you go buy a car, you test drive it first. Come on.
Glenn, what do you think about that?
Well, in modern time, let's say the modern woman, okay, and modern men who have to put up with each other today, okay, modern men. Romantic love is the new God, okay? The search for love has replaced the search for God. In other words, today, more people look for salvation through relationship than through religion. So herein lies the problem. You're not fixing yourself. You're looking for help all the time from somebody else. Your reprieve. They will give it to you. You'll get what you need for a little while, but that's like a compulsive behavior, and you'll get used to it. So then you'll move on to the next person. This is why that ideology today is more pronounced than ever. It's people just using each other for personal benefit. You know, we've heard the expressions friends with benefits, people who live together, they have separate bedrooms, but sometimes, they meet in the living room or whatever. So this herein lies the problem. So it's taking the importance away from something so important as physical sex within a bonding relationship.
What is the purpose of sex in general?
Procreation.
Exactly. Right. So that you can take it to existential question, right? So I brought it up before in the show. So if why is procreation important to humanity in the spiritual sense, which is part of our existence, is when we give birth to children, this is basically bodies for the spirits to come in and to have a physical experience here on earth, right? So you cannot have the relationship without sex, right? We cannot talk about family without sex because that's integral.
Well, if it's true that it's for procreation, what happens when we get to an age where we can't have children anymore? Do we just stop having sex? I mean, is that the case, right? I mean, here's the thing.
That's a very good point.
That's a good
right?
point.
If that's
Excellent.
the case, because these are rules that
What
I'm
about
not
we help
convinced
meets?
about.
What about we help meets to each other, and we require different things at different stages of our life? So maybe if the sex isn't the focus, like you said, if the honeymoon isn't the phase that we're focusing on, but that's the holistic approach, then when the sex with ages subsides because the man gets older or the woman, whatever, whatever the chemical biological processes that do happen, maybe that bond remains very strong regardless of the intimacy. By the way, what's in the retirement homes, the STDs are rampant
Yep.
because they have like promiscuity to the max.
Of course, that one guy, that poor one guy, is
Tell me
being
more.
used. Oh, I heard about this. My mother-in-law was in a home before, and boy, there was like just a handful of men with like 100 women.
Give me an
Oh
age.
boy. Oh, they're like in their 80s, honey, and 90s. Oh yeah.
Tell me. No, I'm serious. Tell me your mom's story. I mean, you can't just bring it
Well,
up
no,
and
no,
not
my
tell me.
mother-in-law wasn't part of it, of course. So we just heard stories, but
So
you know,
hold on. I'm actually curious because I'm going to get to that age and I want to get prepared. Should I go to the retirement home or
yeah.
should I find a wife?
Oh, no,
What's
yeah.
better, the retirement home or the wife?
well, usually the wife is dead, so the guy is alone. He's not cheating on his wife. He's alone. The poor guy is being raped by like dozens of women.
Oh, so it's the women that.
Oh yes, because women outlive men. So when you're in this is very well known. This is not just me saying it.
So what do? They give him like Viagra for his birthday, and then like I'll come test it out today.
Don't know, but maybe he doesn't need it or after a while he probably needs it because these women. Oh, it's really brutal how I think one of the things is when you bring up the whole Christianity and the
I'm
religion.
smiling.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward
You're
to my
looking
retirement
forward, yeah.
years.
I'll tell you exactly where to go. There's a lot
gee,
of
man, going to be a real whore master in the old folks'
Oh
home. Let me
boy,
tell you.
your skills are gonna come into play, and we're gonna make money off of you, dude. So that's where I'm gonna get my retirement funds by selling off Glenn's like G-Man. So yeah, so that's why I'm not a big believer in the whole religious meaning around celibacy or anything like that. I think as human beings, I'm a proponent of your own self-expression and how you express yourself and your physical needs, but in the most integrous and dignified way, not in a depraved way, because there's depravity that's disgusting. It's a very low frequency. And you know when somebody is just dirty, depraved versus somebody who wants to express through love and giving. There's a big difference.
I'm glad you brought it up, expression, right? So if we talk in spiritual terms, we know chakras. I don't know, brothers and sisters, if you know chakras, but let's say we're not going into this conversation, but throat chakra, right? It's the fifth chakra. It's your expression. It's the things that, it's how you express yourself. It's how you talk to others. It's how you express what you want, express your feelings, express your creativity, express yourself in general as a being, right? But it's often related to your second chakra, which is your sexuality and creativity tied into one. Why is the sexuality and creativity tied into one? It's because it's all part of your expression. To what level do you take that expression? Like you always, what your boundaries are. Are you setting boundaries for that expression? Are you even open to express yourself? Can you express yourself? And I think one of the prerogatives is to be able to express yourself. You need to know yourself. How can you express yourself once you don't know? So I think it's going back to what Glenn said in terms of happiness. To make another person happy sexually, you need to be happy with yourself in the first place. And then the same way, like, well, if the woman cannot achieve the big O, it's also part of her expression. It has nothing, well, it has a lot to do with the partner too. But if she's constraining herself,
in her head,
and she can't let it go, then she will, no matter how good the partner is, she will never achieve that big O.
No, never.
Right?
Never. A woman needs to be free in her heart and not in her head. Just because that's when these women that are controlling, there's nothing sexy about them. Like there's just, and if you're not feeling sexy, because sexy is a feeling, not a thought. You don't think you're sexy. You should be feeling sexy, not thinking you're sexy.
Why don't you tell the people the truth? Women love to be controlled in the bed.
Oh yeah, but
They
that's
love it.
true. But then they can't be controlling. You see what I
Well,
mean?
that's the women taking on the male characteristics, the
Yeah.
dominating factor. I'm the boss. I'm going to control you.
Yeah.
I'm bigger. I'm stronger. That's something good gone bad.
But I think it's also going back to femininity. Like that's feeling about sexy about yourself. Good as a woman, for example. If the woman does not feel feminine herself, about herself, how can she express that femininity? Right? So it goes back to a self-identity. And now that identity nowadays has been destroyed with all those gender ideologies in a sense, in some way, where you can be a man at night and a woman in the morning or whatever it is. So like we're going back to conversation as traditionalism, right? So if we have a conversation about traditional relationship and a role of intimacy and sex and lovemaking in traditional environment versus modern environment. So I think we gotta like really identify, the modern relationships and traditional relationships. And obviously, if you have a modern woman, or a traditional man, and vice versa, if they both get together and they try to build something from that there is already a disconnect in the value system. It's probably bound to fail from the beginning.
Yeah.
Regardless of how
values are
great the
not-
sex is.
Yeah, the values are not aligned. The sex goes away after a while, right? Your values are what carries you forward.
Where'd it go?
Well, you know what I mean, like that
No, I
dirty
don't.
sex, right? Then you have valued sex.
Scare me.
Yeah.
She's talking about the honeymoon stage.
Yeah, the honeymoons. That animalistic like need for it, and afterwards, it's not a need anymore. It's supposed to be a desire to serve one another. That's what it's supposed to be. But what happens that if you don't have trust and reliability in the relationship, it just goes. A woman needs to feel safe. I'm sure a man does, but I think a man, the safety thing is less important as a woman when it comes to.
I think man just wants to get gratified.
Yeah, exactly.
What kind of man is going to feel safe with a woman?
You're
She
already
better
used
switch,
to it.
right? Like, okay, next. Bad choice.
No,
Again.
the men are not really thinking about that because the role or the purpose of a man, like physiologically, right, is to protect the woman, right? So the man's not thinking about their own safety; they're thinking about everybody's safety, including the children and the woman. But if the woman is not communicating at all, zero, and they're not even feeling trust or anything, then if they're not telling the man, like if I don't trust you, I'm going to say, well, this is why I'm not trusting you. Am I wrong or right? Am I seeing something wrong or anything like that? I will engage in a conversation because for me to hold resentment, the whole world's in trouble. Just get it out of me fast. Otherwise, me in resentment, not a good thing. So but I've seen so many couples nowadays holding back what they need to say, and then not being able to discuss things, and then they hold resentment. Well, that resentment is not going to help in the bedroom, right? It's not. It's better to get these resentments out and deal with it in a way like adults, not fighting and scratching each other's eyeballs out. It's just have a conversation. And if you're having issues communicating, then go see a mediator or a therapist or some kind of marriage counselor or somebody that can help you communicate.
Which would be probably much more difficult for a man because he doesn't like asking for directions, shall
Yeah.
we say, right?
Yeah.
He wants to navigate himself. That's one of the things that men like to do. Yeah, I could understand that, Jan. But, basically, the cycles and the necessity of life, the purpose is you're born, you reproduce, and you die. That's the basic. That's why we're all here. And there'll be another generation, another generation, another generation. So that's in the most basic premise of your existence. Now, let's face it also that sex is more important for a man than it is for a woman. That's why a woman can use sex as a weapon and a control mechanism.
Well, I think you have to explain why it's. I agree with you that sex is more important. Is it also a biological factor, or the procreation, like in the animal world? The lion goes impregnates all those lionesses in his pride
By nature.
by nature.
Yeah.
So the man has some of that animalistic nature
Yeah.
It's
within him as well.
man's nature. It's his instinct. The same instinct that should tell him that there's something wrong with his lady when she's not like her normal great self when it comes to intimacy together. So there's something where he's going to have to, open up a little bit, channel, what's going on. Have a sit down. That is supposed to be the closest person in your life, God and your lady. If you can't talk to your lady, something's wrong with you. Okay? So for young men, because of all this out there, young men, I say, if you chase women, you'll eventually run out of money. Okay? Because that's very important for a woman. But if you chase money, you'll never run out of women. That'll give you more choice. So you'll be able to discern and find what you believe is the best woman for you, because you'll be able to provide, protect, and preside with her to create a better family environment. If more men thought like this, we'd have more families staying together. They'd be doing better for themselves, and the next generation would be getting more positive instead of this negative that we're seeing going on with the next generation all the time.
Well, Susan, that's a question to you then. So let's say if the relationship is actually based on similar values, and maybe it was a birth, or maybe some kind of other incident in a relationship where affected your sex life, how does a couple, or how does the man brings back sex back into his life and his relationship? Is there any key points to take away from this?
Yeah, I mean, for men, because I know cases, not as many problems as women, but a few cases of men who can't satisfy their wives for many reasons. And the main reason is because the man somehow has lost their confidence. And that can happen over time. That can happen where they've given too much and they have nothing else to give. And they come home and their wife is just demanding for that attention in bed and everything. And I mean, I find that highly demanding emotionally.
You know people like that, girl?
Yes, I do.
Can you give them my number, please?
Yeah. No, but
1-800 call Glenn.
and don't forget, the men have self-image issues too, by the way, right? So and what really kills a lot of men in their manhood is not being able to deal with the wives, right? Because the wives, there are highly demanding women out there too. Not in a bad way, but some women are just high maintenance, right? And so the man has given themselves too much and they've lost their own confidence. They haven't focused on themselves enough. So there is a balance there. So I've seen men, but usually what affects men in the bedroom is self-confidence or self-image issues. That's it. That's all it is. They're not proud of their body. They're not proud of whatever it is, right?
What about well, that's a real story actually. Like, I mean, there's a lot of men there who will not admit to it, but at some stage in their life, they may have an erectile dysfunction in that moment
Mm-hmm.
of the lovemaking for many reasons.
Yep.
Maybe they had a stressful day. Maybe I don't know, maybe they didn't exercise as much this week. Maybe it's the age thing, whatever it is. But for many different, it doesn't have to be like a permanent dysfunction,
Yeah.
but maybe dysfunction in that moment.
That moment, yeah.
Or
And usually-
overtrained.
Or
Yeah.
overtrained.
Overtrained.
Of course.
Maybe
you
did
know,
too
when
much
Or
the man
cardio.
would get ready for a competition.
Yeah.
Sometimes I say, you know, I got to put all my energy in this game.
Yeah.
You know, so we're going to have to bring it down to 3 times a week.
Of course. There you go. Not 10 times. But that's the thing too. A lot of men are just tired of having to perform all the time. You know what I mean? Like, it gets tiring to have to always perform, especially if the woman's very demanding and that pressure is a lot. So
Maybe it would be good to go back to the way it was in the beginning when the man was courting the woman.
yeah, exactly.
Taking her out to a nice place, you know, sitting talking, having a few drinks, going out there, making it special, making the girl feel like she's special and she's in the presence of somebody who really cares
Yeah.
and, is listening to her and is understanding. He's really making an effort and then they, like they did in the beginning. And then they go home and wow, the fireworks start happening all over
Well,
again,
it's important
just
for
like the
both.
beginning.
It's important for both. It's a form of a foreplay, right? It's a
Well, as
mental.
long as it turns the man on. I mean, in the end of the day, we're talking about cases where the men are having issues with performing, right? So, and it's whatever that. I have a client who actually successfully did a lot of role playing things. So they played a lot in their relationship where they would go out dressed as, hey, whatever works for different people.
A
right?
transgender?
No.
No? Oh, okay. I thought, okay. Well, you said
No.
role playing. I said, well, that's the whole point of transgenderism,
No,
right?
they would be dressed up in different people as different people, right? And
They go
going
flirt
out.
with each other like it's the first
Persona.
time.
Yeah, exactly, right? Whatever works, right?
Well, Jordan Peterson said that. It's not even me. Like, you have to keep the relationship alive. It's
Spicy.
important to have dates.
Yep.
He says 2 dates a week.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, and also stop crying on all your podcasts, Jordan, please, because your wife must be looking at you and say, I'm married to a crybaby. Can you stop that, please?
Well, he's crying
Stop it.
because he's not getting any. 100%.
Well, you don't show the public that. You know what I mean?
But you can see it. He can see it. He's deeply
Take care of
hurt.
things, brother. Take care of things. You can do it. I have faith in you, okay? JP, I have faith in you. You can do it.
Well, maybe he had
his
some
wife likes
post-traumatic
him
stuff.
crying. You
Yeah,
know?
maybe that's her
Really?
thing.
I don't know. Hey, man, like I never discount what some people like. They're what they like. I don't. Hey,
But I
what-
think if we're going to like a tradition, well, not even traditional, but like subconscious even approach, women, even if they are modern women, and they're like, oh, I need an open-minded man, whatever it is. Maybe I'm gonna wear a strap-on tonight. She's still, I think, in subconscious level, she wants a strong man.
Yep, of
I
course.
think she still
Everybody
wants a
does.
strong man. He wants the
Everybody
man to
does.
defend her, defend the household, and provide for the household. And when she needs him, he needs to be out there. Okay, I have a question. How much of that is how much of that is sex life is affected by, let's say, a man, even if he doesn't understand, most likely he doesn't even understand why it's happening, but he realizing after the honeymoon phase that the woman is not what he is expecting, because he actually is looking for that strong support, because he has to go out there day and provide and, go, especially if it's a high value man. He's going to encounter stresses with which he deals as a man throughout the day. But when he comes home, he wants to deal with none. He doesn't want a headache coming from the woman, and he expects the woman to be understanding of that. But it goes back to the same, like if you're not on the same page and you understand that the woman is a strong support, the matriarch is important to a patriarch. And we oftentimes don't see it till matriarch is gone from the family as well, like how important it was to a patriarch, right? So it goes back to the value system. But the man is still a human. So when he comes home and then wife is, "Wah, wah, wah, wah," you need to do this, you need to fix this, and whatever the story is.
Brings me back to what I said before about the difference between beautiful and attractive. A man comes home, he's going to find his wife attractive if she's physically, has the TNA that he's looking for and everything. That's what he liked. That's why he hunted her. And also, she's very easy to get along with. She understands, she's chill around the house. Hey, babe, I made this nice meal for us. And like, wow,
Mm.
it makes it a little bit easier to get up in the morning and go and do it again, to go fight for your share of the blue sky.
So it's much as man is the foundation, the center of the family, and how much he actually responsible for the well-being of his family, woman has a lot to do with the well-being and the intimate end of that. It doesn't, and by intimate, I don't mean sex alone, but intimate in the vulnerable state where the man could feel
Like a man.
like a man.
You're
It's not complicated.
well, a man shouldn't. A man is not going to feel like a man depending on what somebody else does. He has the confidence in himself to carry himself the way he's supposed to be all the time. For every action, there's a reaction, but he's not reactive. He's responsive.
Mm-hmm.
He's responsible to himself first as a man. He said, I got this. I am what I am, and that I am. And that is a real man. So she or any other person or whatever can come along to try and challenge that. But when he's secure with himself and he knows he's on the right path, he will not be knocked off that path, brother.
So let me summarize the show. I mean, we've been at it for an hour. I know we can talk about sex forever, right?
First of all, half of marriages end in divorce. And sex is a very important part of a marriage, obviously, right? If you look at marriages that are 10 years or less, 70% will end in divorce. People who are married for a second time, 2/3 of them, minimum, end up in divorce. People who get married 3 times, 3 strikes and you're out, 3/4% chance that's not going to work. They're going to get divorced. So I ask this question now to the panel and to the people here. How many people are together, still married, are happy? And how many people who aren't married, but they're in a relationship together, how many of them are still happy? And you're going to be surprised at how small a percentage of that is, because people are looking for somebody else to make them happy.
What's the percentage? 10%?
Max. Because there's a problem in society in general. People are not being accountable, self-responsible. They're expecting somebody else to make them happy or unhappy. You as the individual, you have to focus on yourself. You have to go into a mirror and have a conversation with yourself. Are you happy with yourself? Have you accepted the bad things that happened to you that you did in the past? What about the future? Do you have a guide? Do you have goals, aspirations? Do you feel that you're on that path, that no matter what happens to you, you're still going to get there no matter what, one way or another? Well, if everybody starts thinking like that and they accept themselves and they make themselves happy first, then they're going to be able to give this to somebody else who's in the same position. So then you get love in a synergistic effect. 1 + 1 will equal 3 in this case.
Well, there's a downside to that too. When you have a whole society of self-evolved leaders, is then they can't find anybody. Because then the integration becomes too difficult. You see, because when society has too many individualistic people, right, then there's no need to combine anymore, because, and this is where there's a fine balance. Yes, we need to be happy, but we need to be always also seeking to coexist with another person. Whereas the whole self-empowerment theory has created a bunch of soldiers that don't know how to be with other people. You see what I mean? So there is that fine line of, you don't have to be fully happy, but you have to be on the road towards happy. And if two people are on the road towards happy, they can come together and create that dualistic happiness together. But there's so many people I know, women, especially women, that are so single that they're single and they don't even know how to open up their heart or how to collaborate or even how to attract somebody that's right, because they believe they are right. So
That's a protection mechanism, right? They've been through some negative stuff, and so they've put themselves in a lock,
they've
in a shell.
overstudied. They've overstudied, men and women. When we've overstudied, we become too right, and that's, we have to be somewhat okay to be wrong to go into a relationship, because you're supposed to learn what is right from a community standpoint or from a coexisting standpoint, not our own ideas, right? Because I've had to let go of a lot of my ideologies in marriage. What I thought was certain is no longer certain. And I love that part of me, that I've been able to let go of what my certainty was, because somebody else was able to gain my trust to show me that, hey, there's another way of looking at it, right? And that's why that's what makes me feel human, or I think everybody should feel human, by allowing somebody to get you to change your mind.
Compromise.
Yeah, because you cannot be self-righteous in a relationship. That's why a lot of the women I know that are very single, they're self-righteous, and there's no room for self-righteousness in a relationship.
That's the result of being overstudied.
Overstudied, yeah, for sure. Overstudied, because it becomes all theories, right?
That's good news, because I didn't study much.
No,
I didn't want to be part of the
overstudied
matrix.
meaning life.
I know.
Oh.
Thanks for the heads up.
Not studying as in books. You know how many books I read? Like cover to cover? Less than 5. I don't give a crap about books. It's other people's ideas.
Yeah, so you're a people watcher. People learner.
Experiencer.
Experiencer.
Yeah.
So the compromise that we're talking about, we always talk about that there's a compromise in conflict. We have to, the clear solution to the conflict is compromise in some way, and how one willing to compromise with the other, especially in the relationship. Even though if you have similar values, you will discover things about each other, personalities that will be different, that you will encounter in a way that it wasn't the same before, or during the honeymoon phase. So when you are encountering those issues, it goes back to your ego, right? Are you willing to subside your ego to actually, and I think that's the point of the show, are you willing to listen to your partner, to hear them, not to put in your 2 cents, not to come up with a solution for them, but can you just hear them and hear their point of view, hear their position, and to understand where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And once you understand, then you can address it. Most of us not even willing to understand, because we're so ego driven. It's like, man, I don't want to hear you. I got the trauma. Like, I'm looking for my person and you're not it.
Everybody is trauma driven when you're in a relationship. It will draw out every single one of your traumas. Believe me. Yes. Oh, yes. Every single one.
So
trauma is a reflection. It's your wake up call on how to make yourself better.
Yeah.
When you can control your trauma and you learn how to deal with it, which most people don't do. They do. That creates compulsive behavior.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing anything else but what you're supposed to do. Okay? But when you do what's hard, not what's easy, what's right, not what's wrong, you fix yourself first. And we've said it on the show also that, everybody's had certain traumas in their life. We don't know what their life is, but we just see how they're dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the new modern way, it's not your fault. Here, we got a medication for that. That doesn't work. Sometimes a little bit of tough love and going the hard way, because this is the easy way that everybody's used to. Why not go the hard way, something more difficult? Okay, so the path least taken will lead you to new places.
Brothers and sisters, it's been an amazing show, Susan and Glenn. I know you guys love talking about sex, and that's the only reason you're here in the studio, and that's why we talk about it.
Women say, I feel. Men say, I think.
Yeah.
But real men just do.
So that's a good advice, brothers and sisters. If you are looking how to fix your sex life in your home, just do it. No, that's not really it, is it? Actually, in Canada, if you just do it and even your married partner is against that at the moment, that's still considered rape. I think you still could be charged with rape even in the marriage. I think that's still a valid thing. But that's a whole different show in itself. Obviously, I'm very happy to have you here in the studio, and this was another episode of Love Squared. I don't know if we answer all the questions on how to fix your marriage, I think, or how to fix your sex life in the marriage. I think you always have to look in the mirror and how can you fix yourself? How can you be whole? How can you be happy? Because other person will not satisfy you or fulfill your desires, including the sexual ones, unless you are happy with yourself in the moment.
Yes.
Well, let's hope that some people leave some comments so to give a little bit of heads up where we're going.
That's a good
How you think we're covering the subject, or what you think about what something we said, or probably what the G-Man said may have pissed you off or triggered you, but hey, that's life, and my intention is good. If I pissed you off, first of all, I don't give a shit. Okay, that's you deal with your issues. Okay?
Life stuff, wear a helmet.
That's right. We're here to help you discern, help you to find the way. Okay, empower yourself.
And also to listen, because, we all go through issues at one point or another, and your story is not unique. Your story is actually more common than you think. And if you look around, listen around, you will find the solution. It's always easier to find, it's better to find a solution based on someone else's experience. But unfortunately, and nowadays, we can only learn from our own personal experiences, and we're like, oh, it never happened to anyone except me. No, it happened to your neighbor, it happened to your family member, it happened to everyone, just at different stages. So there's a solution. You're not alone at this. There are professionals. You can go check out the LoveHacker. All the links are below. If you need any consultation on that, she's very helpful. She helped me with my sex life. Specifically with Rambo. No, it's a joke.
leave the Rambo, the mascot. Leave him out of this.
Brothers and sisters, thank you once again for tuning in to the Love Squared, and we'll see you on the next one. Glenn, we make a community worse for everyone.